All right, so now we're going to start talking about the unit circle. And I'm going to make this full screen. So this is a unit circle, okay? The one thing about a unit circle is it's actually on a coordinate plane. So you can think of this as your y-axis. You can think of this as your x-axis. Okay. We're not going to do all the coordinates today, but we are going to do a couple. So again, unit circle. If this is the origin, this circle is centered about the origin. And the other special thing about the unit circle is that this length, which is the radius of the circle, is a length of 1. Okay, so it has a radius of, so two main things that make this a unit circle. Okay, so unit really stands for 1, so unit circle is 1 centered about the origin. Okay, so first we're going to talk about degrees. So if I start here, okay, I'm really starting at 0 degrees, so that's the slot for degrees. Okay, if I went the whole way around, so the whole way around like we talked about in our bell ringer, I would be at 360 degrees. So this bottom slot is talking about when you go the whole way around. Okay, and we already talked about if I had half a circle, I'd be at 180, so here's 180. And then my fourth of a circle, so fourth of the circle would be 90 degrees, and then 3/4 of the circle would end up being 270 degrees. Okay, so we got that. Now it's going to start to chop it. So it first takes the 0 to 90, 0 to 90, and cuts it in half. That's this stream right here. Okay, well halfway between 0 and 90 is 45 degrees. Okay, so we're going to go over here now. We're going to cut this one in half. So halfway between 180 and 90 is 45. You could also think of it as adding 45 degrees each time. So 90 plus 45 is 135. And then again, we're going to do that to this quadrant. So if I add 45 to 180, I end up with 225, which is this slot. Okay, and then I do it one more time. And if I add 45 to 270, I end up with 315. So this is 315. All right, so nothing too earth-shattering here. Now what they do, instead of cutting it by 45 degrees each time, they're going to cut it by 30 degrees each time. So if I go from this 0 degrees up to this, that's 30 degrees. So 30 degrees, okay? If I add 30 more, okay, I'm at 60 degrees. Okay, and then you add 30 more, you get 90. Okay, and you keep going in this pattern. So here you add 30 to 90, you get 120. You add 30 again, you get 150. You add 30 again, you get 180. Okay. So now I'm going to do the lower half. So 180 plus 30 is 210. Add 30 again. We're skipping over the 45 ones because that really would be 15 degrees in there instead of 30. So if I add 30 to 210, I get 240. And I add 30 points, or 30 degrees, sorry, and I get 270. Now I add 30 again, so 270, I get 300. And then I add 30 again, I get 330. And just to check to make sure if you add 30 again, you end up with 360. Okay, so that's the degrees part. There's one other part we're going to do. Okay, so there's two ways to measure a circle. There's degrees, which we just did. That's the normal, everyday. We talk about degrees all the time and every day. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about radians. Okay, radians have to do with the fact that a circle, radians have to do with the circumference. So the circumference of this circle, if you remember the circumference formula, is 2 pi r. So if our radius is 1, then our circumference is 2 pi. So that means the distance the whole way around the outside, is 2 pi in length. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break it up. So we're going to be talking about, okay, well, if I only go 1/4 of the way, how long is that? So let's start with a half. So if the whole thing is 2 pi, you would be starting here with 0, just like before. And this would be 2 pi because you went the whole way around. Now, if I go halfway, half of 2 pi, so 2 pi divided by 2, would just be pi. So 180 degrees is equal to pi in radians. Okay? So now we're going to kind of take this and split it again. So if half the circle is pi, then I cut that in half again, I would get this 90. So I'd have pi over 2. Okay? And then if I came the whole way around, I would end up being, it's like every quarter is another half. So I end up with 3/4. I'm sorry, not 3/4 pi. I end up with 1.5, which is 3 pi over 2. That's where I got 3 from. 3 pi over 2, that's the radians. Okay? So now I have to kind of think about, if I'm going to take this 1/2 and cut it in half again, which would leave me at 45. So 1/2 cut in half is 1/4. So pi over 4. Okay. And now I'm going to think the same thing. So I'm basically going to be adding 1/4 of a pi to this. So 1/4 of a pi to pi over 2 would be 3 pi over 4. Okay, and then I get a pi. I'm going to add 1/4 again, which actually ends up giving me 5 pi over 4. And then I get to here. Okay, so this would really be like 6 over 4, which reduces to 3/2. And then 7 over 4, so 7 pi over 4. And then 8 pi over 4. 8 pi over 4 would be 2 pi. That's kind of how I think about it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split. I've got to do these sections. So I've got to do the 30 degrees. So I'm going to think about taking pi and splitting it in 6 sections. I know this is really messy. Actually, let's try and clean it up some. So I'm going to try and take just this half of my circle, okay, and split it into 6. So here's 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so 6 slots. So pi, you're splitting it into 6 pieces. So here, this first one would be pi over 6. Okay, and then the next one would be 2 pi over 6. And if you think of 2 pi over 6, that reduces to pi over 3. Okay, so this is really 2 pi over 6, which reduces. Okay, this one would be 3 pi over 6, which reduces to 1/2. So then here I get 4 pi over 6, which reduces to 2 pi over 3. Okay, and then so forth. So if I add another one, 4 plus 1 is 5. So here I'd have 5 pi over 6. And then 6 pi over 6 is just 1 pi. So now I'm going to keep adding my 1/6. So if I think of this, if I think of my pi as 6 over 6, then I add 1 to it, I get 7 pi over 6. Okay. If I add another 1 to it, I end up with 8 pi over 6, and 8 pi over 6 reduces to 4 pi over 3. So this becomes 4 pi over 3. And then I add 9 over 6, which reduces to 3 over 2. And then I have 10 over 6, which reduces to 5 over 3. And then, remember I was at 10, so now I'm at 11 pi over 6, which doesn't reduce. And if I add my last 6 on there, I end up with 12 pi over 6, which is 2. Okay, so really we need to make sure that we can fill in the degrees, and we can also fill in the radians. Okay, remember the radians are the pi thing. So please make sure you know how you got those. Okay, that will help tremendously when we're moving on and talking about radians and pi and the unit circle. Our next step, which we're going to be done with this video in a second, but our next step is these coordinate planes, these coordinate points, okay, which we're not going to do all of them today, but there are a couple easy ones we can do. Okay, so the couple easy ones that we're going to do is going to be these endpoints. So this point here, this point, and this one. So remember I told you that the unit circle has a radius of 1. So if I go out here 1, I need to go up NE, because remember this is our y-axis here, and our x-axis here. Okay, so this coordinate point would just be 1, 0. Okay, so I go over 1 and up none. This one at the top here, I actually went over 0, and I went up 1. So this coordinate at the very top of the circle is 0, 1. Okay, going to the left, so over here on the left, I'm going -1 directions, and I'm going up 0. So this would be the point, -1, 0. And then you can probably figure out that this point is going to be 0, -1. And I'm dropping 1, but I'm not running left or right at all. All right, that's your intro to the unit circle. You can now go ahead and turn in your reading guide into the substitute, and then they will give you a spiral to start working on. Or if you would prefer to work on your homework, that's fine too. Just make sure with the spirals that you know how to do everything, that you're not copying off your neighbor. You will get a 0 if I suspect copying. All right, have a good weekend.